The red earth of the village had barely cooled from the morning sun when the cries came from the clay house near the forest's edge. Inside lived two sisters, Tari, just 14, and little Athena, only 6. That week, a strange illness swept through the land like a curse. It spared the goats and chickens, but claimed their parents within 3 days. One moment, Tari was a child helping her mother grind millet. The next, 2 shallow graves were being dug in their compound. From that day forward, childhood became a memory she could no longer afford. The village mourned briefly, wailing drums, headscarves dipped in ash. But as always, they moved on. Only Tari remained stuck in that moment, like the world had split down the middle and left her on the wrong side of it. There was life before the illness, when her mother hummed old lullabies while pounding yam, when her father's deep laughter filled their little compound every evening, when her only worry was memorizing the days of the week at school and keeping Athena's braids neat for Sunday church. Back then, home smelled of roasted groundnuts and warm soap, and her sister always had clean feet and a full belly. And then, without warning, there was everything after. The house became too quiet. The cooking pot stayed empty. The roof leaked when it rained, but no one came to fix it. Athena started waking up hungry, crying in the middle of the night. Tari tried to be strong, but she didn't know how to be a parent. She was barely more than a child herself. She buried her childhood that same week. With no relatives willing to take them in, she became both mother and sister to Athena, who was just 6 at the time, wide-eyed and constantly asking when Mama would come back. In the beginning, food was a miracle, something that came not from the kitchen, but from luck and mercy. Some days, they survived on nothing but roasted cassava that Tari dug from the edge of a neighbor's farm when no one was watching too closely. Other days, they survived on maize porridge, watery and barely sweetened, just enough to warm the belly, but not enough to silence the hunger. Tari would stir it slowly over firewood smoke, whispering stories to Athena to distract her from how thin the meal was. Sometimes they sucked on mango seeds thrown aside by schoolchildren to trick their stomachs into forgetting hunger. But not every day was filled with hunger and shame. Some days a miracle came with steam. A kind neighbor, Auntie Felicia, would call from her porch, "Tari, come, I cooked too much soup today." She'd hand over a bowl with a few pieces of meat swimming in it, thick with scent leaves, and a warm ball of pounded yam wrapped in old newspaper. On rare lucky evenings, Mama Jata would bring a plate of jollof rice, spicy and bright, tucked beneath a folded cloth to keep it warm. "There's too much rice," she'd say, though everyone knew it was a lie. She made just enough, but gave anyway. Tari never forgot those acts, not the smell of that first smoky agouti, not the feeling of having a full belly and watching Athena fall asleep with traces of soup still on her chin. Those meals weren't just food, they were reminders that kindness still existed, that people could see her struggle, and that even in a world that had taken so much, there were still hearts willing to give. At night, after Athena had eaten and curled beside her, Tari would sit at the doorway of their crumbling house, staring at the stars and whispering softly, "One day I will repay every plate of food. One day Athena will wear her own school uniform. One day we'll eat what we want, not just what we're given." Tari dropped out of school quietly. No one questioned it. The headmaster didn't send for her, and her classmates soon forgot to ask where she'd gone. After all, hunger had a way of erasing you from people's memories. She started hawking, walking from compound to compound with a tray balanced on her head and little Athena trailing behind like a shadow. First it was boiled groundnuts, their scent barely masking the ache in her stomach. Then firewood, heavy bundles strapped to her back, her neck sore from the weight before the sun even reached its highest point. Sometimes she sold palm oil, when a kind-hearted trader in the next village allowed her to carry a keg on credit. She would measure it out carefully with old tins, praying that no one accused her of cheating them, praying even harder that someone would actually buy. She called this season of her life the walking years, because that's all she seemed to do: walk under the blistering sun, walk through muddy paths during the rains, walk with cracked heels and torn slippers, hoping to make enough to buy just one sweet orange for Athena. There were days when the shame almost swallowed her, when people whispered as she passed, "So young, and already carrying life's burdens. Where are her people? Pity, such a pretty girl." But Tari never stopped moving. Her feet were tired, but her will refused to break. She would always mumble to herself, "One day, I will take us out of this. One day, we will not beg. One day, my sister will go to school and wear shoes." And somewhere deep inside her, past the hunger, past the tears, she believed it. Word of the girl's suffering had travelled farther than Tari could ever have imagined. One day, as fate would have it, a visiting trader from the village came into Auntie Ronke's tailoring shop in Suru. The woman spoke casually as she waited for her wrapper to be hemmed, chatting about the village, the recent harvest, and then, almost as an afterthought, she said, "Ah, do you remember Kika's children? Tari and little Athena? It's God keeping them alive. Nay, since their parents died, those poor girls have been fending for themselves like wild goats. No family, no helper. The elder one dropped out of school. She's now selling groundnuts in the sun. It's really pitiful." The words sank into Auntie Ronke like a thorn. Kiki, her childhood best friend, the one she had shared mangoes with behind the old school building, the one who used to lend her books, helped her study, and sneak out with her to the river after Sunday church. They had lost touch when Ronke left the village for the city, chasing big dreams and louder skies. But she had never forgotten her friend's kindness, or her laughter. The moment the customer left, Auntie Ronke packed up her sewing, closed her shop early, and sat by the window for a long time, her heart twisting with guilt and urgency. By the next morning, she had found a way to the village. The neighbours came out to stare. Children paused their games. She arrived dressed in bright ankara and confidence, but her steps were weighed down by worry. She asked around gently for the girls, offering smiles and small greetings, until an old woman finally pointed her toward the clay house at the edge of the forest. What she saw broke her. Tari, skin browned by the sun, was hunched over firewood, peeling yam with a blade that had seen better years. Athena, thin as a broomstick, sat nearby, chasing flies from her feet, her dress 2 sizes too small and stained with dust. Auntie Ronke didn't speak at first. She just stood there, staring, and when Tari looked up, eyes wide with confusion, Auntie Ronke walked forward and pulled her into a tight hug. Her perfume was sharp and unfamiliar, but her embrace was warm and steady. "I heard," she whispered into Tari's ear, her voice catching. "I heard how hard it's been, and I'm so sorry I wasn't there sooner, but I'm here now, and I'm not leaving without you." That very evening, Auntie Ronke cooked a pot of jollof rice for the sisters, bathed Athena herself, scrubbing the child's tiny feet like she was polishing gold, then wrapped her in an old towel. She asked no questions about the past. Instead, she made calls on her small black phone as they ate under the stars. By morning, she had visited the village chief, handed over a small brown envelope, and knelt respectfully before him. She thanked the neighbours who had helped the girls survive, and promised to return for a proper Thanksgiving. Then, as the sun climbed over the baobab trees, she turned to Tari and said simply, "Pack what you can carry. You're leaving this place today." Tari stared at her, unsure whether to cry or run. "Where are we going?" "To where the dust does not settle on your dreams," Auntie Ronke replied. She bundled the girls into her old Peugeot with 2 small bags and a flask of leftover rice. Athena sat in the back, her eyes wide with wonder as the village faded behind them. Tari, sitting in the front seat, couldn't stop looking out the window. Her chest was tight, not with fear, but with a strange, quiet hope she hadn't felt in years. They drove for hours, past green hills, sleepy towns, and wide rivers, until the roads grew smoother and the air smelled of exhaust and fried plantain. The city rose ahead of them like a mountain of glass and noise. It was overwhelming, enormous, alive. That night, in a small apartment in Suru, with electricity flickering in and out and car horns blaring in the distance. Tari lay on a mattress beside her sister and whispered, "We're not in Andunda anymore." And Athena whispered back, "Is this what heaven feels like?" In the weeks that followed their arrival in the city, Auntie Ronke moved like a whirlwind of purpose. She took a leave of absence from her job as a tailor in her busy market stall, just to help the girls settle in. With the last of her savings, she bought 2 sets of school uniforms, notebooks, a few worn-out textbooks, and a pair of black shoes, each, slightly oversized so they'd last longer. Tari was placed in a public secondary school not far from the apartment, while Athena started at a small local primary school. Neither had birth certificates or report cards, but Auntie Ronke spoke with firm grace, promised to bring them later, and left behind a bag of groundnuts and bread for the school secretary. That's how things were done. School was hard at first. Tari struggled to catch up, her English slow, her handwriting uneven, but she had something the other girls didn't, a hunger that came from knowing exactly what it felt like to go to bed on an empty stomach. She studied with the same fire that had kept her selling firewood in the hot sun, and her teachers noticed. Auntie Ronke made sacrifices too. She stopped buying new fabric for her tailoring business and began stitching from leftover scraps. She ate plain bread at night just so she could afford internet bundles for Tari to research schoolwork. She never complained, never reminded the girls of what they owed her, but they saw. Every evening, Tari washed her aunt's feet after work. Athena massaged her back with coconut oil and rubbed balm into her tired palms. They cooked for her, cleaned, fetched water when the tap ran dry, and sat beside her in the evenings as she told them stories of her youth. Years passed. Tari finished secondary school with top scores. A church scholarship sent her to university, where she studied business administration. Athena followed in her footsteps, choosing to study education. Both girls worked part-time, one as a receptionist, the other as a cashier, to contribute to bills and buy data for online classes. Their aunt's once cramped apartment began to change, little by little. First, it was a standing fan they bought together after saving for months. Then a gas cooker. Then a television. By the time Tari graduated, they had repainted the entire apartment and replaced the old couch Auntie Ronke had slept on for 10 years. After several years, the once hungry girls of the village grew into remarkable women. Tari had risen steadily in the logistics firm where she started as an intern. She was now a senior operations manager, confident, respected, and with a corner office that overlooked the bustling city. Her voice commanded boardrooms. Her ideas moved trucks and supply chains across the country. Athena, now a graceful young woman with poise and presence, had become a sought-after early childhood educator. Children adored her, and parents trusted her with what they held most precious. Her name was on awards, her photos in magazines, and her dreams finally had room to breathe. Despite their busy lives, one thing never changed: the deep, quiet gratitude they felt for Auntie Ronke, the woman who had plucked them from dust and despair, the woman who gave everything and asked for nothing. One evening, after weeks of secret planning and whispered conversations, the sisters returned to the small flat that had once been their safe haven. Tari wore a navy blue dress and Athena a soft yellow blouse, both holding back tears behind wide smiles. They found Auntie Ronke in her usual seat, legs propped up, glasses balanced on her nose, flipping through a worn newspaper. The aroma of jollof rice wafted from the kitchen, and the TV murmured in the background. "Auntie," Tari said, stepping forward, "we have something for you." Athena handed her a brown envelope. Inside was a folded document and a large silver key tied with a red ribbon. Auntie Ronke looked up, confused. "What is this now? Another surprise birthday?" Tari knelt beside her and took her hand. "It's a deed, to your own house, a real home, no more rent, no more leaky roof. We bought it together, just to say, thank you." For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then the key slid from the ribbon and dropped onto Auntie Ronke's lap with a soft clink. like the sound of destiny unlocking a long-awaited blessing. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. Her eyes blinked fast, as if tears might fall, and she hadn't yet decided whether to let them. You bought me a house?" she whispered. Afena nodded, kneeling beside her sister. "You gave us a life. This is just a small piece of what we owe you." Auntie Ronke covered her mouth and let the tears fall. "I have no children of my own, but God gave me you, and you have returned more than I ever gave." That weekend, they moved her into the new house. It was a charming bungalow on a quiet street with flowering hibiscus, a bright blue gate, and enough space for her to plant her beloved aloe vera and vegetables. Auntie Ronke, who had once made do with broken furniture and flickering bulbs, now had her own room with lace curtains, brand new furniture, and a wardrobe full of clean wrappers. On the wall of her new living room, the sisters hung a framed photo of the three of them, taken years ago in the cramped kitchen of their old apartment, arms around each other, wearing mismatched aprons and wide grins. Below it, they added a plaque that read, "To the woman who gave us more than shelter, you gave us hope." And Auntie Ronke? She walked through the rooms like a queen, her laughter louder, her steps lighter. When guests visited, she would point to the framed photo and say proudly, "I didn't birth them, but they made me a mother, twice over." And on Sundays, when visitors came to admire her new place, she would smile with pride and say, "I have no womb-born children, but God gave me better. He gave me my reward early." Sometimes, on quiet afternoons, as she walked through her flowering compound, humming old tunes, neighbors would watch and whisper, "She must have done something right. Look at how her blessings walk." And Auntie Ronke would smile to herself, tuck her wrapper at the waist, and whisper back to the wind, "It wasn't luck, it was love. I loved them when they had nothing, and now they've given me everything." Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share and subscribe to this channel for more stories.